Loop.tv.
Hey, and welcome to the Derek D. Dozen. 24 minutes of podcast gloriousness, folks. Now listen, this is part 2 of the exclusive interview with Anthony DeAngelis, or as I like to call him, Dad. Make sure you follow the show on Instagram at Derek D. Dozen. And as I said in part 1, this is a 3-part series interview I did with my dad because, listen, folks, I couldn't talk to my pops for just 24 minutes. He's lived a lot of life and an interesting life, so I needed to break this up into 3 parts. And for these episodes, there is video to go along with it as well because I figured I needed the video element too. So you can watch and listen to each part over on my YouTube channel. Just click the link in the description of this episode or in the description of part 1 or part 3's episode so you can watch it as well. Or head to derekd.com, which you can find all my social media there, including my YouTube. Of course, you could just listen if you'd like as well, wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so when we finished part 1, my dad and I were talking about how I got into the entertainment industry and my parents' reaction to when I told them I was going to be an actor. So we're going to pick up right there. Here's part 2 of the Derek D. Dozen with my dad, Big Tone. Well, there was always some worries too, right? We had conversations about that stuff, you know, like, well, what are you gonna do for the classic? What are you gonna do for money? What about like insurance and stuff?
You need something. You need something. The old. You need something to fall back on. You know, I always, when I was playing music, because I did play full time professionally, with no other job for a period of time. That's how we bought our first house in Ocean Grove.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The money we used to buy that house came from my musical career. A lot of it, anyway.
It's pretty cool that you could say that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was always funny just to be like, have your kid be like, yeah, I'm going to go into the entertainment industry. It's probably like, oh, I'm not on what's going on here now.
I was actually proud of you, and I thought, hey, you know, he's got a lot of ability, so let's let him, you know, see what happens.
Yeah, as you saw like time go on, where you're like, wow, he got that, he got this, and then, you know, especially Fastlane Daily, which lasted so long, you know, and then all these other things, commercial stuff like that. You know, I'd imagine it's probably like, I guess you made the right choice.
And I could see that you were good at it too, you know, and I knew that it wasn't easy to do that.
No, it's not, and it's still not. You know, you were just saying you got to have a plan B or something to fall back on. See, I don't live by that. I just move forward, keep moving forward, get this sitcom picked up, and you know, we're working hard on that.
I think it's the right way to go. I mean, you're happy doing what you're doing. Not that many people could say that.
Yeah, you know, and it definitely has its sacrifices involved in the, you know, with choosing this career. But you know, a lot of people, they want to tear you down because they see you doing, like, wow, he's doing. Why does he get to just go do that? And it's extremely hard. People think like, oh yeah, you know, what they see on social media and stuff. It's, you know, I post stuff, it's all real, but it's like, it's not all good.
If you line up any 10 people, 8 of them hate their jobs.
It's true. I always say you got to love what you do, or at least extremely like what you do, but like you go home to what you enjoy. Like, hey, I'm a family man. Like, that's what I really love, but work's cool. I don't mind work. I enjoy it, and it allows me to do this with my family. And if that's your main thing, that's your main thing.
You know, it's funny. All 3 of you are like that.
Out of 3 kids, none of us took like, quote unquote, the traditional route.
No.
And I feel bad at times because I'm so happy that you have one grandkid at least. You know, you got Braden, and I would like to have one kid at some point. But you'd probably think if you know, you asked 30-year-old you'd be like, oh, by the time you're this age, you're gonna have multiple grandkids. You know, Jay, he's a trainer, and that's a tough business, and he's in that. That's not the regular 9 to 5. I definitely didn't take the regular 9 to 5. And my sister is gonna be she's been all over the world traveling, and you know, she's going into being a life coach and guidance for people and stuff. And she's great at that. It's crazy. You know, you only have one grandkid, you got 3.
Well, she found out early on that she didn't like being in the classroom.
No, yeah, she was a teacher. Yeah. And
she likes working with kids. But she's still going to work with young people. But she's going to be more of a mentor.
Yeah.
That's what she's going to do. Classroom's not for everybody. I had my tough times in the classroom, especially teaching in Asbury Park.
Let's name off some of your jobs. What have you? So my dad was a musician. He did that for years. You worked in a butcher shop. That's when you were younger. What else?
I've had a lot of driving jobs, delivering stuff. You know, in fact, I still do that now, part time. I worked for a company in California, which was a pharmaceutical company. I was a technician, and what I did was I wound up, after only a few months being promoted to supervisor of a department.
And that was in California. My mom and dad moved to California when you were how old?
We were married 1 year at the time. I was 26.
What made you move to California? Just to get out of Jersey for a while, get away from...
I had been to California. I took a Greyhound bus by myself. And then I was about 19, 20. And I just went to California. I actually got an apartment in Hollywood, right near the old Hollywood Bowl. You could walk to the Hollywood Bowl from my apartment. And it was the hippie days.
Wait, you lived out there before Mom moved out there with you?
Yeah, because we were dating by then.
Yeah.
My plan was, if I told her I want to stay here, so you have to come out. She said, I'm not coming out. I said, what?
I said, wait, I'm not in California. You're on the other side of the country. How am I going to get there?
I said, it's great here. You love it. No. That's why I came
What
back.
year was that?
1966, 67.
And then you came back, and then Mom went back with you after you got married.
We moved out there in 72.
And you lived out there for how many years?
Almost 4. And we lived in a beach town.
Yeah, Newport Beach, right?
Yeah, I used to surf in those days.
Yeah.
I started surfing in New Jersey.
You've done a lot of things.
Eclectic.
Yeah, very eclectic, very, very, very well rounded. Like if I feel like you could jump in any conversation and be like, oh yeah, I was this once and related to that, like pharmaceutical stuff. You were a teacher in multiple districts. You were a musician. You used to sell medical supplies for Jersey Shore Medical Center.
Once I was a chauffeur for a very wealthy guy in the real
Oh,
estate.
that's right. Didn't you drive his car? My dad.
Mercedes.
Yeah, my dad. This guy. My dad was that was out in California, right?
No, that was here.
Here, but you drove some. Didn't you drive one of his cars across country for him?
Oh, you're talking about the movie producer
Oh,
whose car I drove from California to New York City. He was a wealthy movie producer. He produced a movie about Jimi Hendrix. And he interviewed me, and he knew I was a musician, the producer,
yeah.
to take his brand new Pontiac Le Mans that was beautiful, beautiful car.
Yeah.
And he wanted somebody who was going to take good care of it, drive it leisurely across the country. That's the word he used. I remember.
How fast did you get it up to?
Well over 100. I used to take him to Broadway plays all the time, and he'd have all these hot chicks that he'd be with, and I would drive them to the theater in New York.
Yeah.
And then pick them up. They'd go out to dinner afterwards. I'd pick them up late at night, drive them back to where he lived in Jersey.
What's advice you'd give 25-year-old you?
You should have never dropped out of college.
And the first time you did finish, you finished later in life.
Yeah, I finished. But I would say, if I was talking to a 25-year-old, I'd say,
25-year-old you. You walk in a room and there's 25-year-old you standing right there. What would you say?
I'd probably say, finish college, use your degree, and get yourself a career with something you like teaching, because I was already had some teaching experience and
Right.
I was good at it. And I would have stayed with teaching probably and gone all the way through and finished a master's degree. And
You know what? You did do that. You did later in life. You went to Thomas Edison State University, right?
Yeah.
You got your teaching degree and you became a teacher. How long? I know you were in a bunch of different districts, but how long were you a teacher again?
10, 15 years.
Yeah, 10, 15 years. And then you went into book sales. And I'm just, we don't have to get into all that. I'm just saying you had a lot of different jobs.
I worked in sales a number of times.
So being a teacher, that helped, definitely with the book sales
selling to
back then.
teachers.
You did medical sales. So you probably had I'm not talking about like little dinky jobs, but real jobs. You probably had like 20.
I managed a department at Jersey Shore Medical Center.
Yeah. So you did. It's crazy. You've got a lot of good stories, and let's turn for a second and go back to North Jersey when you were younger. Now it always fascinates me that our family has some sort of connections to the mob, to the mafia in some sort of way. Your mom, my grandma Mary, and her sisters, they were really good friends. With they always hung out with Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons.
Frankie Valli started. He used to sing in my Aunt Ray's bar. She knew enough mob guys.
They knew the Four Seasons knew wise guys, of course.
Yeah.
And yeah, my dad's Aunt Ray, she was my great aunt, my grandmother's sister. She was tough as nails.
Oh yeah.
I remember she died probably when I was 6 or 7.
She was tougher than most guys.
Yeah, and wasn't she kind of like a gumar? She was like she in quotes owned a bar in Newark, right?
Well, they put it in her name.
They put it in her name. I mean, that's pretty...
I worked there. I used to clean up, like sweep.
I remember my Aunt Lucy, another sister of my grandmother's, she would say, they were out dancing one time, and these guys tried to dance with them, and they weren't having it, and these guys wouldn't stop bothering them. And
Ray knocked one of the guys on his butt.
I think that, but there was another time, and Aunt Lucy said that these guys went up to the guys that were bothering them and took them outside and
Oh, yeah.
beat the crap out of them.
But the biggest mob connection, if I had to name one in my family, would be my grandfather. And my grandfather, when he was in the meat business, he got contracts like with the Army and stuff.
Yeah.
And he only got those because he knew the right people.
Through-
And some of them were mobsters.
Through mob connections. What about the Gerardos?
Well, the Gerardos, yeah. Andy Gerardo, my Uncle Carmen's brother. Uncle Carmen was married to my Aunt Ella.
Yeah.
It's my dad's sister. His brother was the Capo di Capo in Newark. In fact, there's a whole
So
FBI.
capo means captain.
Yeah,
So he's a captain in the mob.
yeah, in Newark, New Jersey. In fact, there was a TV special about Andrew, about that whole thing.
Yeah. And wasn't there?
And he wanted to take me in.
Yeah, this is a crazy story too. Tell that story. I know this story.
Well, Uncle Andy, we used to call him, took me aside one time at a funeral. So a family member had passed away, and he was at the funeral, dressed to the nines.
Yep.
In his $1,000 in those days suit, and he said to me, Anthony, I want to talk to you when
Yeah.
when you get a chance, come over and talk to me. So I went over, and he said, when you finish college, I want to put you to work. I said, doing what? He goes, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that.
He goes, you'll have a college degree. It'll be good money, real good money. But I want you to check with your father first.
But where was that work?
I don't know, wherever he wanted me to be.
Didn't you say something like he had some work for you down in Atlantic City?
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that part. Yeah, he did say in Atlantic City because it's going to be big. It was before gambling started in Atlantic City.
Right, exactly. So they were figuring on the pulse.
Yeah, so they were trying to get smart kids that were already family connected.
Right.
So he said, but I don't want you to do anything for me without clearing it with your dad first. So talk to your dad. If your dad says okay, we'll start the process. And when I went to my father, my dad said, Anthony, once you hook up with those guys, that's it for life. You're going to be hooked up for life. Yeah. And whatever they tell you to do, you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Or you're going to get hurt.
Right.
So my dad said, no, just tell him thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah. What did he say to that? All right, I respect that.
He did respect that.
Yeah.
He said, okay. He goes, if it's not cool with your dad, it's not cool with me.
Oh, well, see, I guess there's always that respect element for the most part.
Well, my dad, my dad knew things too.
Yeah, well, wasn't there something in the butcher shop or at a something getting his hair cut? Someone was getting their hair cut?
There was some kind of time in my dad's life where he needed money. And my grandfather had cut him off because he was pissed at him. And he borrowed money from a Shylock. You know what a Shylock is?
No.
It's somebody that lends money at very high interest rates.
Oh, okay.
Usually in the mob.
Yeah.
And my dad owed this money. And when he had the butcher shop, and I was working for him. So one day I'm in the store working, and these 4 guys walk in, dressed in suits,
Yeesh.
and they take my dad in the back. And I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So they left, and I went to my dad. Dad, what was that all about? He goes, we'll talk sometime. We can't talk now.
That's sketchy.
It was about money he owed.
Wow, but didn't someone get murdered? Didn't someone get murdered like outside a barber shop or something?
Oh, that's a whole other.
Dad's like, oh, well, not really. And every time I say, oh, yeah, that, yeah, there's this and that.
Yeah, there was a barber shop right across the street from the church we went to, which was St. Anthony's, ironically. And next to the barber shop was the Italian American Club.
Oh, there it is.
And one day I'm getting my hair cut.
Oh, okay, that's the connection with the haircut.
And a black limousine pulls up right in front of the Italian American Club. And these guys get out with guns. And the barber grabs me and throws me on the floor and lays over me.
Jeez.
He says, kid, just be quiet, kid. And I hear boom, 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 boom. And they shot up the place.
Wait, they shot up the place you were in?
No, the Italian American.
Oh, the Italian American. Okay, yeah, not the...
2 guys got hit by bullets, but nobody died. And then they took off.
My goodness. Jeez. I mean, you got to think, these are... My dad grew up in the classic, like, North Jersey, like, without getting all into it, he got in a million fights, like, when he was growing up with neighborhood kids, and even when he was older, got into fights, And the mob was definitely around and big back then, especially in North Jersey. And it's just always fun to hear stories because, like I said, my Aunt Lucy would talk about hanging out with Frankie Valli. And, the movie Jersey Boys, there's a my mom and my dad, and they took her to see Jersey Boys on Broadway years ago. She's passed since then. When she came back, I was asking her about it, and she was like, yeah, it was great because I was there like that one night. But it didn't really happen like this. Explaining, she's like, yeah, and I knew Tom Mooch, and I knew all these guys. But in the movie, there's a mob guy played by Christopher Walken.
That's right.
And that, I forget his name, but the mob guy in real life loved Aunt Ray. That's what Aunt Lucy was saying, or Uncle John, or someone was telling me.
Well, Aunt Ray
asked Aunt Ray multiple times. This guy was a millionaire back then. Come marry me, or come away with me.
Yeah, I think.
I remember that. She was like, she was like, one, you're married, you have to get a divorce first, and second, I'm not marrying into the mob.
Yeah.
But that guy wanted Aunt Ray. I forget his name.
She went out with some seedy characters because I remember it. And I was always like her favorite nephew, or one of her favorite.
Yeah. And
she would take me places like to amusement parks.
Yeah.
Palisades Park back in the day. And she would take me with her boyfriend, who at the time was probably a mob guy. And they would spend money like you couldn't believe.
Yeah. I
Give
just
me $20 bills like left and right. Here, go have fun, kid.
Yeah. I just thought it was always funny to hear that story, especially with I'm
Louis B.
Oh, that was the guy, her boyfriend.
One of the dudes she went out with.
But this guy was like a famous mob guy, and it's the Christopher Walken character in the movie Jersey Boys. It's that guy. He loved my Aunt Ray, but she said no because she didn't want to marry into the mob. But I mean, you look at our family, last names: DeAngelis, MAFIA, Stazzone, Bonanno. Nothing's anything else but Italian.
That's true.
So there's going to be some sort of connection in there. And the one thing it's cool that I always think that's cool that is sort of my connection. My dad was talking about Andy Girardo, who was a capo, right?
Yeah.
He was capo. His grandson.
My cousin Nicky Girardo was connected. And Nicky Girardo, when my brother got divorced the first time.
Cousin Nicky, who was at my graduation parties and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, Nicky on my dad's side was one of my closest cousins. Nicky was connected. When Uncle John got divorced, my brother, his first phone call he got was from cousin Nicky. He said, yo, cuz. He said, what do you want us to do? He said, what do you mean do? He goes, to her. Because she broke your heart. She went with another guy. You want her legs broken? What do you want? My brother said, no.
Was he talking about, he wasn't talking about her. He was talking about him, right? The guy.
No, he's talking about both of them.
Jeez.
He was talking about both of them. And my brother said, no, I don't want you to do anything.
Yeah, and the reason I bring Nicky up, and he's passed since because he was in a bad car accident, and he had complications of that later in life.
He also had cirrhosis of the liver from drinking and drugs.
Right. But my experience, and I remember my grandmother passed away, my dad's mom. I was 17. He shows up. He's at the funeral, and he's in this decked out purple suit. And I said to Mom, I'm like, who are these other? There was guys in the funeral home on the wall, just like in suits, standing there, like with their hands crossed. I'm like, this is my grandmother. I know everyone here, all the family. I don't know these guys. I said, Mom, who are those? I don't know if she was joking or not. I don't think she was. Nonchalantly, she goes, wise guys.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Oh, yeah. We ran into them a lot because when my cousin got engaged, now this is my cousin Lydia, who eventually married Ron.
Yeah. I love how my dad just drops names, no problem.
He
could just say, my cousin.
She was engaged to Anthony Imperiali's son, Kenny. Anthony Imperiali was a mobster, and he was big in Newark. I was his paper boy.
Yeah.
He used to give me like $20 tips. Paper boy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway,
$20 tip back then, that's like $100.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, his son, Kenny, was engaged to my cousin Lydia. And they had an engagement party. There was like big dudes all standing at the door with expensive suits on, eyeing everybody. And my dad, he had his jacket and tie on, so did I.
Yeah.
And they took him aside and said, come here. And they frisked him. They wanted to make sure he wasn't carrying a piece.
Packing heat.
And they called me over too. And I'm a teenager. I'm like a young kid.
Yeah.
They said, my father said, no, he's just a kid. He's not carrying.
Yeah, he's not packing heat.
But I got a little nervous,
But that's crazy. Like I mentioned when we started talking about this, my dad's like, oh, and then we go into it, and there's all these crazy stories and connections. And talking about Nikki, it was Leets, my sister Alyssa, we call her Leets. It was her graduation party. It was her high school, I think it was 8th grade, her 8th grade graduation party. Because it was right after I was a Slim Shady at the MTV Movie Awards, at the VMAs. I was one of the, I'm Slim Shady. I was one of those guys. And my dad, in normal conversation with Nikki, mentioned to him that MTV never paid me. And we're at this graduation party in my backyard. He pulls me aside. And I'm like, what's going on? Hey, cousin, I just called him Cousin Nicky. Pulls me aside away from everyone else. He goes, hey, Dad tells me you never got paid for the that thing you did. And I was like, yeah, it sucks. I thought they were going to pay me. I said, it was really fun, though. It was such an experience and everything. And dead serious, he looks at me and goes, how much you want? I went, what? I didn't know what he's talking about. I said, what do you mean, how much do I want? How much do you want? You're supposed to get paid. We'll talk to people. We'll get you paid. I said, do you know people at MTV? He's like, yeah, we know people. I go, whoa. So now it clicks in my head. I'm like, oh, he's saying he's going to talk to somebody, is going to get MTV to pay me somehow. And he literally goes, what do you want, 500, 1,000? I'm like, what is going on? And then in my head, I'm like thinking of that story my dad told me about, like, they do you a favor, you might have to do them a favor. And I just said, I went into mode. It was like, no, thanks. No, you know what? I went into like it was just a great experience and it's fine. It was only $150 or whatever. And he's like, all right, but you do work. You're supposed to get paid. And, we can get you more. I'm like, who's going to get me more? Nicky, you don't work for MTV. Who do you mean? Who's getting me more money? And who can get me 500 to 1,000? Meanwhile, that's a lot of money back then. And it's still a lot of money now. But I just thought, A, that was crazy. And B, that was cool. I was like, that's my experience with almost getting paid some money from someone connected to the mob.
And Nicky was always the kind of guy, I loved him dearly. But he was always the kind of guy you had to watch. You don't want to get him pissed at you. He got mad at me. Well, he was out of it, because when he had the car accident, I was one of the first people to go see him. Yeah. He was in a hospital bed. He was in traction. He had all kinds of broken bones, and he was heavy on meds. And I leaned over, gave him a kiss. I said, yo, cuz, how you doing, man? And he said to me, don't mess around with my wife. I said, what? I said, Nick, of course not. He goes, I'll kill you. He goes, I can't move right now, but I'll kill you.
Jeez. What a thing to say. Not like, yeah, thanks, cuz, I really appreciate it.
He was out of it.
Yeah, obviously he was on a bunch of stuff. But anyway, I just always think it's interesting to talk about that stuff. Like, that connection. Obviously, me and my family, we're not in the mob by any means. But there is those stories and those connections with our family, which is very interesting.
My grandfather one time said, come here, Butchie. And he gave me a wad of money, like that dick. Yeah. And he said, guess how much money's there? I said, I don't know, Pop. He said, 20,000. He goes, that's the most money you ever held in your life, right?
Wow. Back then, 20,000? That's like $100,000.
I don't know where he got it. I didn't ask any questions. But that was my grandfather. By the way, he had the best gun collection you could ever imagine. He had guns from the Civil War.
Oh, wow.
From the Revolutionary War.
Too bad you don't have those still. We're worth a lot of money.
Cousin Lucian was a heroin addict, and he stole my grandfather's guns and sold them for heroin.
I tell you. And on that note of Cousin Lucian stealing guns for heroin, I think we'll end part 2 of this exclusive interview with my dad, Anthony DeAngelis. In part 3, we'll talk about my dad's battle with alcohol.
I finally completely put alcohol down. Never had another drink since. In August of 2014.
And how my sister saved his life by giving him her liver. Well, 65% of it. My sister donated her liver to my dad. Yeah. Heavy stuff. Plus a lot more. That's all in part 3. And as I've said, you could listen and watch this whole interview on my YouTube channel. Go to DerekD.com to get there. Follow the show on Instagram at DerekD I really appreciate you listening. And of course, for copping my style.
Mood.tv